Welcome to Invercargill in New Zealand's deep south, home to Cycling Southland and the SBS Bank Tour of Southland. Now in its 63rd year, the SBS Bank Tour is one of the country's longest running sporting events and the most prestigious title in New Zealand cycling. The list of past winners is a who's who of New Zealand road racing, and it remains the toughest test of the Kiwi calendar. 108 riders, 18 teams, 7 days, 860 kilometres and only one winner. The opening road stage of the 2019 SBS Bank Tour lived up to reputation, with the famed Southland crosswinds causing havoc in the back half of the 170 kilometre stage to Lumsden. An early two-man breakaway was eventually reeled in, with the winds creating chaos, stretching the weather-beaten peloton out, and several crashes kept medical staff busy. In the end, Australian teenager Jensen Plowright, riding for Kia Motors Ascot Park Hotel, grabbed the stage win in the final sprint down Lumsden's main street, ahead of track stars Campbell Stewart, Nick Kirkazoo and Corbin Strong, putting Plowright in yellow for Tuesday's stage to Tianau.
Yeah, back in Australia, they're all very excited. Mum's birthday was yesterday, so she was very pleased.
The first 2 hours were really relaxed, and we were just sitting back, and it was just looking like it was going to be an easy day. Then all of a sudden, it was in the crosswinds, and everyone was in the gutter, and there's just splits happening everywhere, echelons everywhere, and it's just classic Southland racing, and it was, really enjoyable. I loved it, and all the boys were getting stuck in, and I think there's a group of about 13 of us at the finish line, so it was a classic start to the Tour of Southland, and we're looking forward to more of it today with a bit of rain as well, so it's going to be fun.
Yesterday was a great day for us. Really, we wanted to get the combative jersey and get in the early breaks and just see what would happen, and luckily got enough sprint points to get the green jersey, so definitely today we're going to try and defend it, and the rain, we'll see. It might let a break go and try and do the same thing again. We'll see.
This is going to be another stage like yesterday. A lot of wind, rain coming into play, so quite excited for the weather to come into play a big role.
The wind will play another factor. I think it should be picking up soon, and plenty of headwinds, plenty of crosswinds, and no tailwinds.
So as we can see here, the conditions dramatically different to what we've seen over the past 24 hours for these riders here, which will come into play, no doubt, Doug, for these riders.
Yeah, the conditions in the SBS Bank Tour of Southland play havoc around this coastal area, and there will be a lot of apprehension in the peloton. At the moment, the wind factor is very, very light.
We can see here a number of the riders with the rain jackets on. As we look to the map of 150 kilometres here, these riders are going to be trying to cover over the south and western areas of Southland here, and a traditional finish into town now for a number of years here and on the third day of the tour.
It has predominantly in previous editions been a catalyst for splitting things up and bringing the GC, the general classification riders, to the fore. Conditions like this tend to temper things a wee bit in the group. There'll be the usual riders attempting to get away, but being such a long stage and having that BLACKMOUNT climb in the back of their minds, a lot of these riders will be riding reasonably defensively for a start.
And of course, all the classification jerseys are still very much up for grabs in the early parts of this tour here. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of teams try to put their riders to the forefront here and pick up a few points in the likes of the Harcourt Sprint Ace, for example. The Jesco Hydraulics King of the Mountains with the first hill about to emerge here out of Riverton for the riders.
Yeah, there's a lot of ducking and diving goes on, and of course in these conditions you're getting a lot of water up off the wheels of the riders in front of you, so a lot of the conditions can become quite uncomfortable, become very, very wet, but it certainly isn't dampening any enthusiasm at the front of the race.
No, we can see them stretched out straight away, and for some of the more inexperienced riders, some of the weekend warriors out there trying to achieve this tour here this year, Rion Nolan here for the ITM team. The ITM team, of course, they've been here for about 4 years or so now, involved in the tour, Doug, and Rion, a well-experienced rider.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of this lad over the last few years in this SBS Bank Tour. The climb over the Longwoods is probably the first chance to split things up, and you can see a lot of the guys will be looking ahead at that as you look up on the left. Rion Nolan has stolen away here, hoping that someone's going to come across to meet him, and here we go. Here's a couple of riders, one of the Vet for Farm boys. Haven't seen those guys yet. He's the Swiss rider Adrian Merkt. Great to see the vet for farm, and Mike Shepherd's doing a great job bringing these guys back down again. And he's also joined by the Baz Sitters from the Netherlands riding for the Talbot Forest Cheese team. So it's good to see some of these other teams having a crack today.
Absolutely, and we can see the hill in the horizon there for these riders here. And of course, a few hills involved in the tour, and of course with the King of the Mountains. And today in particular, we're at various points depending on their steepness, their length of the hill. This one considered one of the lower categories, a Cat 4, so 3, 2 and 1 points, as it is the King of the Mountains, the man that we saw off the front yesterday, who secured a number of the points, trying to get some early points here today.
Yeah, he's really giving it his all, and this is one of the early climbs. This is early on in the stage, so he'll be hoping that these other two riders away with him here aren't going to roll him up for the preem points. You can see him starting to roll a wee bit on the bike, but a big effort here from the King of the Mountains rider, Joanne Fuller, riding for the Petrotech Black Max team.
Yes, Fuller will know very well that if he can keep just nabbing away at getting some of these points, he doesn't necessarily have to win all of the King of the Mountains here to try and hold on to this jersey. So he's decided, as we've seen often in this tour, where riders will go out like they do with some of the Sprint Ace points and secure some of those early ones as he digs deep in this first climb.
Yeah, this is quite a tough wee climb. It's springboard, goes up and up and steps and stairs, but once you get to the top, it's a big descent through. And there's number 73 Campbell Pithy from Christchurch riding for the ITM team, can't hold the wheel, and Joanne Fuller from the Petrotech team, he's stoked to get those points.
He is indeed. He knows that could be enough to ensure that he holds on to it for the rest of the day.
So the descent off that Longwoods climb now is starting to really rev up, and the Placemakers team at the front of the race here are really starting to drive this field. They've got the yellow jersey wearer, of course, and they'll be really trying to keep things together as much as they can in this stage.
So the camera guy is doing a great shot through the middle of the peloton here. Of course, 105 starters of the original 108 here today for the stage across to Te Anau. And it is the Placemakers team who are setting up the echelon on the front. In the red colours there, you can see the Kia Motors Ascot Park team. So the big hitters, the ones that have been in contention over the first couple of days, have got themselves just trying to control things.
Yeah, it's all about survival. We're really only on the third road stage here, if you take into account the prologue, but there's a long way to go, and there's a lot of conservation of effort that a lot of these riders will use on a day like today. The weather conditions are wet, but the wind hasn't yet hit them as we go around the coast, closer to Colac Bay where we're approaching now. Things may blow up a wee bit, so there'll be still a wee bit of apprehension in the field.
Here's Hausler, the man in the Harcourt's Sprint Ace, and we saw him at the top of the show describing how things went for him yesterday. He had a great effort off the front, and again, just trying to have a bit of a nudge. It's hard to imagine, Doug, 12 months ago we were getting along this coastal road. It was blue skies, the sea was perfectly dead flat, but today it's typical Southland Tour weather.
And I think this is what attracts all these riders to this race, the reputation for the terrain, the weather conditions, the aggressive riding of the field, and the fact that every stage can break apart so quickly really does have an attraction. But today, apart from this wet, the conditions haven't been too bad.
So this group of 5 riders just hitting off the front here to see if they can open a decent sort of a gap, and quite a representation of the teams involved here. Once again, we see the Team Skoda Fruzio teams with Kuipers this time. They're one of the youngest teams, if not the youngest team involved in this year's tour. We've got PowerNet in there as well with Ollie Jones. We saw him the first of the hill climb, so obviously today he's been given the heads up from the team management to have a go.
And day one's tour leader James Harvey from the Placemakers team sitting at the back of this group, collecting tickets, making sure things don't get too far away.
So here we can see back in the peloton, it's all concentration, which is important in any bike race, but particularly in these cool, wet conditions. The fatigue will start to set in for a few of them as we go back to this breakaway, trying to establish themselves well off the front here. And we look to the likes of Theo Gilbertson there. He's 9 minutes 58 down on the overall general classification, so that'll be a factor in determining back in the peloton where they let this sort of a guy go off the front.
The faces say it all here. These guys are in a real 100% mode. They're really drilling this, trying to get away, and you can see at the back it's not helping having the boy Harvey sitting on from Placemakers just collecting tickets, but these other guys are really committing to make this break stick and are hoping, if they can, to get a good handy lead on early in this stage.
So you can see the commitment on the faces of this group here. It's very important in a breakaway, if they're going to establish some sort of a decent distance on it, that they have to decide to ignore the colours on their back and work as a unified group here to open up. And we can see now it's slowly but surely doing that here as the heads start to drop in the main peloton. They're just trying to stay as dry and as warm as possible.
And interestingly there you can see Hamish Schreurs from the PowerNet team just sneaking onto the back of this breakaway, so he'll take a wee bit of a breather and a wee bit of time to get his composure back, but this could be a real handy thing. More riders in the front group could mean it stays away for longer.
And not only more riders, but now we have two men from the same team, with Ollie Jones of PowerNet coming through towards the front, and you can see Schreurs at the very back. And of course Schreurs, a former Junior World representative, now riding for the Israel Academy team, one of the World Trade teams that ride at the Tour de France. So he's got a lot of experience that he brings to this group of 6 riders.
Yeah, there's some commitment here. The feeding that these guys do throughout the stages here is also paramount. The colder weather does make you eat more perhaps than a hotter day like yesterday, so the nutrition becomes a big factor in your survival of these stages.
Now that's a good point, as we see Hamish Keast, who yesterday was doing a power of work for his team, as he is today. He has bounced back after a horrific day for him yesterday with the old sunstroke setting in. He got the stitch, he got the cramp going on, everything shut down on him after a huge amount of effort. He's bounced back, that's youth for you, and he's back out there today for his team.
Yeah, they're coordinating things nicely at the front of the group. They're the Placemakers squad, as we saw, but this is the front of the race. This is where we're concentrating. We're coming through Oropoki. There's the cafe, fantastic wee spot there, and it is quite exposed. Just over the back of here is the ocean, and it can blow up in the blink of an eye. So these guys will be really, really hoping that the conditions stay the way they are.
And as we see further back down the road, it is, of course, the chasing peloton, and it is still Placemakers on the front. It's got Keast, it's got Dylan Kennett tucked in behind there. Then we see the likes of Haggerty. Bat would be next, and the man eating right at the back of their team is Vink. Of course, the defending champion, who hasn't fired too many shots yet. He'll be waiting for tomorrow, of course, the big climb up Coronet, which he has performed extremely well in.
Yeah, Hamish Schreurs has really, really come to the front of this breakaway. He took a while to get across, but he's driving that front breakaway. And back in the peloton here, you can see the Kia Motors boys, some of these fellas from America and the young lad from Mexico. He'll be getting a baptism of Southland fire as to how cold it can get and what it's like to not feel your legs, Julian.
So it's not just the riders that are finding it challenging out there today, but also the technology, with our cameraman out there doing a great job. But unfortunately, due to these conditions, one of those cameras is shut down, so we're down to the one camera out there to try and cover this course here, which is not the easiest thing to do, but as you can see from the coverage already, they're doing a great job of it.
Yeah, these wet conditions are just all-encompassing. You cannot escape the rain. It gets everywhere, and it'll be very uncomfortable, or the peloton are still stuck together and looking pretty good.
So we still see the local man Keast on the front. Quite a number of Southlanders this year, Doug, involved in the Tour. A few of them with a few years under the belt here for the Tour racing, and a few guys in their first ever Tour.
Yeah, it's great. It's always very dear to my heart, being a Southland rider myself, and these guys are getting a real education. When you're in a team like you are with the Michael Vink type characters who have won it before, you learn more about bike racing in a week than you do in a year, Julian, and a lot of these other races. So it's a real credit to these young guys that they've got the heads up to start in this Placemakers squad. There's Josh Haggerty. He has been around for a long time now, and it does take you a long time to get into the pattern of this race. It's just such a difficult thing to get your head round.
Yes, it's certainly one of those races. It's very hard to explain to riders if it's their first time how much they have to learn. It's not just about being fast. It's certainly not just about being the strongest rider out there. There's a lot of thinking that has to go on, and of course about rehydration throughout, the eating, the recovery periods that are required here to ensure you can bounce back each day.
This is a very exceptionally difficult part of this stage. The false flat before the climb up BLACKMOUNT. Oh, there's one of the Kia Motors team just popped his foot out. Nick White from Australia. That was very unfortunate. Sometimes does happen, but this is a tough stretch. It's false flat. The roads are heavy. A lot of these guys aren't used to riding on roads that are so, the chip's so rough. The gears they use have to be lower, and there's some real strength sapping stuff going on out the front.
It certainly is, and for those who have never been here before, as you said, the thick chip on the road here in this western Southland region, it makes it very hard indeed, and all of a sudden you're thinking, you thought you were okay, feeling all good, and that's all of a sudden the legs feel very, very heavy on it indeed. But for the local guys here, the guys with the experience of the tour, they know what to expect as the long drag towards BLACKMOUNT as we see our leaders start at the base of the climb here. This will be interesting to see with the likes of the power net guys. Two men are they going to try and make a break here?
Exactly, and this is the prime opportunity on a climb like the BLACKMOUNT to try and springboard. There's still such a long way to go and the descent is so fast. My take here, if this group's going to stay away and get away to the finish, they're going to have to stick together up this climb, because safety in numbers over the top, there's still a long way to go and it's still very fast even once you get to MANAPOURI. So you can see here the rider at the front, number 33 from the power net team, Ollie Jones from Christchurch, setting a nice tempo. He's not blowing anyone to bits. They're using quite low gears, as you can see. He's well down on the cluster there, and he's set a nice tempo up here, hoping to stay with the group and that the whole group gets across the top of this climb and has a crack for the finish.
Gilbertson there sitting in second wheel for the team from Creation Science, Ronald McDonald, House Rico. And he's been doing a power of work, that young man, and that's in this particular bunch here as they roll through one of the turns of the climb. It quite drags out for quite some time. They know over the top, though, of course, there's quite a decent sort of a descent. They'll get up to close to 90 to 100 k an hour.
Yeah, there's a bit of a attack going on here from the Creation Signs rider now, Teo Gilbertson, trying to get the points across the top. Of course, there's a bit of money attached across the top, but it looks like this group is going to stick pretty much, the majority of them are going to stick together. They'll sit up over the top of here, and it looks like it's the power net rider who's going to get it. Ollie Jones from Christchurch is going to take this preem. Here he is just getting out of his seat across the top just to make sure that things are going to go his way. And they'll sit up, they'll have something to drink, they'll zip up their jackets, because the descent off this BLACKMOUNT climb can reach speeds of in excess of 80 kilometres an hour, so it's going to be very, very cold on the descent here today.
Ollie Jones has certainly been prominent on a number of the sprints as well as the King of the Mountains. Now that's categorised as a Cat 1 climb, that particular one, so that's worth 10 points in comparison to when we first left out of Riverton there. It was only worth the 3 points, so you can catapult yourself up the leaders board very, very quickly, and that's what some of these riders here will be doing. And of course, in amongst these six, looking at where they sit on the general classification, Doug, there's 3 of them in the top sort of 10 seconds off the lead versus another 3 who are down by about 9 or 10 minutes. So quite a mix on the general classification. So here we have the main peloton descending off the big climb here, and you can see the Stonewood Homes silver jersey with Paul Odlin. That's for the riders 35 years plus of age in the tour, but don't let that put you off. This man has got a lot of experience and he's often at the front of the race, Doug.
Yeah, a lot of experience sitting on the shoulders of Paul Odlin. He's been there, done that in a lot of respects in all sorts of different jerseys of this SBS Bank Tour. But nothing's over, and there's another group of chaps trying to get away from the peloton. That looks like one of the Swiss riders. The Vet for Farm boys are having a bit of a crack there, exposing their hand, and that looks like one of the Placemakers team jumping away with him, just trying to shut things down a wee bit. But there's still a long way to go, even from the base of this climb, and you get to MANAPOURI and think it's job done, but by crikey, it's all the way uphill from MANAPOURI to Te Anau, Julian, and things can get quite testy.
Yes, and the prestige of which this race actually holds across the world, Doug. We've got an entire team here from Switzerland, which is fantastic to be able to see. Here's a young Pithy, number 73, riding for the ITM team. We saw him early on in the stage. He's decided again to have another bit of a crack, trying to get away from the main peloton across to that leading group of 6 riders.
It's just so great to see all of these other teams having a crack in this year's race, and it really does show you the depth of the field this year there, that you've got the riders that are able to do this sort of thing. We've got a long way to go on this stage, and back at the leading group, it looks like one of them has been dropped up across the top of that BLACKMOUNT climb, and that would have been the boy from the Team Skoda, Copers from Auckland. But we're coming into towards MANAPOURI, and then there's a hard right-hander. There's still a long way to go, and some of the faces on some of these guys are reflecting that it's been a long day out.
The other thoughts that will be going through the minds of these 6 riders, of course, is that there's 2 of them from that one team. So the onus is on them. They'll know they'll be trying to set up one of them. I would suggest at the moment it possibly could be Schreuers, who got to sit on towards the back as his teammate managed to pick up a number of the points and just set the pace there. We now see the man from Placemakers, of course, the day 1 stage yellow holder, and that's so he's now starting to roll through for it as they get closer and closer to the finish, hoping that they might actually take out a stage here.
Interestingly, now you see a couple of the other teams starting to emerge at the front of the peloton. This is the Base Solutions Racing West Coast North Island squad, and their man Campbell Stewart there is at the front. Back in the front of the group though, coming through in towards Manapuri, it's all cat and mouse in the breakaway, which is not a good thing. To try and stay away, you've got to have a cohesive group of chaps working together. And there's number 36, Hamish Schreuers from Christchurch. She's saying enough's enough. I'm going to go give this a crack and see who's got the legs to follow me. But it's going to be a long way for these guys if they're going to ride like this.
Here's a Jones and Schreuers, the men that are putting the pressure on. As we see one of the riders here, this is a different view at the back of the race here. He's had a hard day, the body has cracked, and he's now just going to cruise to the finish. Cyrus Monk, a former under-23 Australian national champion, and a very good bike rider indeed. He's done his job for his team, sat up and is going to cruise towards the finish, but still has to make the time cut, which is all important.
And once again, you can see Hamish Schreuers trying to drive this break with 15k's to go, but ominously in the background you can see the peloton breathing down their necks. I would pick these guys riding like this. They're probably going to get caught.
So the crowd are in anticipation here for the bunch sprint finish into town now on day 3 of the tour. And there's some very good sprinters indeed. And it's the man in the pink jersey, the World Omnium champion, Campbell Stewart from Corbin Strong of Southland, who sneaks into 2nd place from Plowright, the yellow jersey holder. But it is Campbell Stewart to take victory into town now. So the World Omnium champion Campbell Stewart secures his first ever yellow jersey in the SBS Bank Tour of Southland by a mere 4 seconds from Plowright, with James Harvey at 12 and 3rd place. After a big effort off the front all day long, Ollie Jones secures himself the Harcourt Sprint Ace with 22 points. Joanne Fuller rode a very smart race to pick up the first climb of the day and secure for himself the Jesco Hydraulics King of the Mountains. Campbell Stewart continues to lead in the Henderson Construction under-23 category by a mere 4 seconds from Plowright, and Southland is strong at 15 seconds. Paul Odlin holds on to the Stonewood Home silver jersey by a minute over Glenn Hayden and Calder further back at 10:39. While Theo Gilbertson was awarded today's most combative rider. Kia Motors Ascot Park Hotel team were prominent throughout the stage and have a 3-second advantage over PowerNet and a further 6 seconds back to Placemakers.
So the team plan today was to maybe get somebody in the break, possibly. We knew that there was a strong chance that it could be a sprint finish, with the hopes of getting over BLACKMOUNT for a couple of us sprinters. And the break went earlier, had quite a few of the key members in it, and we missed it, but a few of the teams committed before BLACKMOUNT, we committed after, and we were able to bring it back. And then, took the sprint pretty long there and was able to hold on for it. So tomorrow is obviously Coronet Peak, so it's going to be quite a hard stage. I'll try and, rest up during going into it, and then limit my losses while I'm climbing up there. I think there's a couple of very strong guys, so a couple of minutes back might be okay, and be able to really push it the rest of the week and maybe make something happen.
Follow the action from this historic race with live race updates, full results and pictures at www.tourofsouthland.com.